It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, and welcome to Monster Mondays. I'm Jeff Arbuckle, co-host of the podcast Film Seizure, that you can catch each Wednesday at filmseizure.com or at a number of podcast providers online. This month, I am working through some monster movies of the 2010s. I've already talked about a monster in Lake Michigan, near the far-off world of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This week, it's time to go to the far-off world of London, where we'll meet a young nurse and a gang of hoodlums who will be relied upon to save the world from an alien invasion on Guy Fawkes Night in 2011's Attack the Block. There are two significant names leading the cast of Attack the Block who we'll be talking about shortly, but let's start with writer-director Joe Cornish. Now, Cornish came up through television. He co-starred in The Adam and Joe Show with Adam Buxton, and that was a parody show riffing on pop culture. And along the way, he started making some pretty decent friends in the business. And he would have an uncredited cameo as a zombie in Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead, and would go on to receive a credit as writer on 2015's Ant-Man, which was originally going to be directed by Edgar Wright. Now, I don't know fully what was kept of Wright and Cornish's story in the finished project, but Marvel Studios head honcho Kevin Feige claims that a majority of their finished script ideas remained intact once Adam McKay and Paul Rudd stepped in to write another draft. But without a doubt, though, his chance to work on a Marvel film came as a result of this movie some years earlier. The idea for Attack the Block came from when Cornish himself was mugged, and he thought it would be fun to add the science fiction element to the movie, and set out right away to cast the right kids to play the protagonist gang members of the film. One of the things he really wanted to impress upon audiences was that Attack the Block was meant to kind of run directly counter to the types of films referred to as hoodie horror, in which urban youths were often depicted as villains. And while, yes, they are, when they first appear in this movie, mugging somebody, it's in the end, their desire to do the right thing takes over very quickly. So he also flexed his monster movie and sci-fi fan muscle by dropping references to Douglas Adams, Aldous Huxley, H.G. Wells, J.G. Ballard, who wrote a book called High Rise, where mayhem would break out, which is the main setting of this movie, and John Wyndham, the author of the incredibly popular story The Day of the Triffids. But let's circle back around to that cast and the two breakout actors who appear as our leads. We first meet Samantha Adams, a trainee nurse played by Jodie Whittaker. Now, Whittaker would end up becoming a fairly major star in Britain and later a worldwide name and face. This was not her first performance. She had already been on TV and in film since about 2006. Most of what she had done were dramas or comedy dramas. Her first notable film was Roger Mitchell's Venus in 2006. The notable thing about Venus was that it was the final role in which Peter O'Toole received an Oscar nomination. But after Attack the Block, Whittaker would land a lead role in the British crime drama Broadchurch along with David Tennant and Olivia Colman. Now, of course, this was the project that Tennant took on after leaving his incredibly popular run as the 10th Doctor on Doctor Who. But the series was run by Chris Chibnall, who would go on to become the showrunner of Doctor Who beginning in 2017. And when Chibnall took over, Whittaker would come along with him as the first ever woman cast to play the Doctor as the 13th incarnation of the title character. This would be a role she would hold until 2022 when she left during the 60th anniversary specials that was about to, that basically would lead into the Disney Plus run that started in 2023. And she'd return in a cameo as the 13th Doctor in the final episode of Ncuti Gatwa's very short era as the 15th Doctor as well. Now, also after Attack the Block, our other lead, John Boyega, would seemingly get the role of a lifetime as one of the central figures in a new Star Wars trilogy. In fact, I would argue most of the initial trailers and teasers for 2015's The Force Awakens would focus very heavily on Boyega's character Finn, a stormtrooper who has a crisis of conscience and runs away from the evil First Order in order to join the good guys called the Resistance in the new trilogy. Now, at the time of winning the role of Moses in Attack the Block, Boyega was quite young, only about 18 or 19. This would be his first film, and between Attack the Block and Star Wars, he'd go on to take a lead role in the crime drama Detroit, the Pacific Rim sequel Uprising, and then later appeared in the genuinely entertaining and well-made They Cloned Tyrone that just missed my top 10 of the year that it came out. But at the time of recording this episode, both Boyega and Whittaker are returning for Attack the Block 2, which is in production for an upcoming release. So, yes, let's talk about this movie. It's November 5th, Guy Fawkes Night, and at first, hidden within the fireworks-filled skies celebrating this event in British history, some don't quite realize that there are things coming down from out of the sky. Maybe it's a shooting star or a comet, or maybe it's part of the fiery fireworks trickling down. And we meet nurse trainee Samantha Adams, who is walking home from working a late shift at the hospital. She runs into a gang of thugs led by Moses. And shortly after having to give up her wallet, her purse, her ring, all sorts of personal items, she escapes when something large falls out of the sky and destroys a nearby car. When Moses looks to see what valuables might be inside the wrecked car, he's attacked by a dog-like creature. He stabs the creature and it runs off into the night with the gang following behind, and they track the creature down and kill it. Now, while confused about what this thing could be and where it could have possibly come from, they celebrate killing the thing. Makes them feel tough. It's, these are mostly kids acting out adult fantasies of being hard and tough thugs, basically. But they don't realize that a whole bunch more of these things are coming into the atmosphere. Now, as Moses and his crew walk around the streets, they drag the creature with them, pretty much showing off their kill to all of their friends and the rest of the neighborhood. And they hope to kind of basically become rich and famous from the discovery of the creature. Now, until they can figure out who to contact to get their fame and riches, they take the creature to the basically the penthouse suite of the tower block that they live in, where pot dealer Ron, played by Nick Frost of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, where he hangs out. But when they ask Ron's boss, the psychotic drug lord Hi-Hats drafts Moses into working for him. And they celebrate Moses getting promoted by Hi-Hats, but the gang then notice that a whole bunch more of these meteorite things are falling to Earth, carrying with it more of the creatures that they killed earlier. Now, when they track down one of the falling meteorites, they see inside that whatever was in the thing was much larger and scarier than what they previously killed. The larger, presumably adult creatures have glowing teeth and mouths, and as they try to escape the creature charging, they are tracked down by the police, who have been driving around with Samantha seeking out the gang who mugged her. Now, the cops arrest Moses, but are slaughtered by the creatures, and using fireworks, Moses' gang is able to get the creatures enough away from the police van for one of them to get to the van, get Moses out of the van's cage, and basically take off with it, with Samantha still in the back of the van. Now, after letting Samantha go, the gang decide to return to their home tower block, and They are chased by several more of the creatures, and one of the thugs, Pest, is bitten by one of the creatures. And the gang runs right into Samantha once again, who is just trying to get into her own apartment in the tower block. She lives on the first floor. Now, reminded by her being a nurse as they were rifling through her purse and wallet, they ask her for help in trying to clean up Pest's wound. And as she is kind of dressing that and cleaning it up for him, one of the creatures breaks down Samantha's door and enters her apartment, and Moses kills it with a sword. And as they look over the creature's body, they realize something kind of off-putting about these creatures. They are the blackest things they have ever seen. I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, but Samantha decides to stick with the gang for safety. They go upstairs to an apartment where a group of girls live. One of the girls, Tia, has a thing with Moses. That's how they know about where to go, basically. And that's because the girls live in an apartment that has a security gate that they think will help them stay safe. It's an extra barrier for the creatures to get through. But the creatures don't go through the front door. They go through the window where they kill one of the gang members. Ironically enough, one that's wearing a motorcycle helmet, getting his head ripped off by the creature. Now, the girls and Samantha kill the two creatures, and the girls who saw the smaller infant alien creature Moses killed previously points out that the creatures were going straight for him and reminds him that something he likely has heard before but doesn't take too much stock in until later, that his actions have consequences. Now, the gang has another problem, though. Hi-Hats is a bit of an idiot. He saw the creatures when one of the creatures attacked one of his goons, but believed that it was Moses and his gang who sent the creature after him. He's quite paranoid as a drug kingpin in this little block area. So he thinks that Moses was basically trying to assassinate him with one of these creatures. It's crazy. But he's now got the idea that he wants to kill Moses and the gang. And another of the gang is killed by the creatures as they try to get to Ron's apartment on the top floor. And unfortunately, Hi-Hats is waiting for Moses there. A whole army of the creatures, who are peering into the apartment from outside, break in through the window and attack and kill Hi-Hats, while Sam, Moses, and the others run into Ron's weed room, the room where basically he grows all of Hi-Hat's stash that he sells to the street. And it's the most secure place in the whole tower block. But under the ultraviolet lights in the weed room, it becomes apparent that the creatures are attracted to Moses. When he killed the other alien, they presumed that maybe the smaller, less hairy alien was a female, and it got pheromones all over him. And anyone who touched him or that dead creature basically got attacked. So these creatures they're basically entirely going after Moses, just as Tia said. And so when he killed that other creature, it did bring all of this on him, his friends, and everybody potentially in the tower block. But they basically they state that the creatures are kind of like almost like a spore. You know, they travel from planet to planet seeking an inhabitable place to land. They don't travel in spaceships. So, you know, they're kind of akin to supergiant dandelions. But Moses devises this plan to lure the creatures somewhere so that he can blow them up. And Samantha is sent to Moses' apartment to turn on all the gas and shut all of the shutters. And sure enough, Sam is able to navigate around the building without attracting the attention or being attacked by the creatures. She hasn't gotten any of the stuff on her, any of the pheromones, so they don't really care about her. Moses straps the smaller alien to his back and leads the creatures to his apartment, where he lets off a Roman candle to basically blow the entire apartment up with all of the creatures inside. Moses, Pest, Ron, and another pothead always hanging around named Brewis are arrested for all the deaths and destruction of the night. And Samantha tells the police that they're her neighbors and protected her during the attack. And the residents of the block begin cheering for Moses as the hero who basically saved everybody from the alien invasion. So let's talk about those three things I like about Attack the Block. First, I really like the performance by John Boyega. What's really great about it is that he really does come off as a kid. He says that he is 15 in the movie, which is kind of interesting because he is like 18 when they filmed it. But Samantha says to him that he looks older because he carries himself older. He tries to be more grown up than he really is. And, you know, there are times in which he acts tough and hard and all of that, but you can also see a lot of insecurity. All of that is obviously a facade. His youth shows through when he's acting the most tough. It's like a kid who wants to do or be something, but throws little tantrums or lashes out when he's frustrated, or as is the case often in this movie, Moses is unable to be taken all that seriously by whoever he's trying to be tough around. Or oftentimes Samantha is basically verbally attacking him for what he did to her at the start of the movie. And it's he has to lash out to try to be the bigger person, to try to be the tougher person. It's a really subtle performance. I mean, he's not just some caricature of a street thug. And more on that here in just a moment about how these characters work together. But he's kind of a kid in a situation a lot of people who likely live in lower rent places find themselves in, having to fall into the typical molds set up by the environment. Again, more on that here in just a moment. But John Boyega really shows that, all of this in his performance. And it's no wonder he would ultimately go on to do bigger things. Next, kind of piggybacking off that first I really like how the Samantha character plays off of Moses and his gang. There's social commentary going on here. Yeah, I know. It's easy to try to fit that into the narrative based on your own leanings or perspective, but hear me out. When we're introduced to our characters, Samantha is clearly uptight and bothered about the neighborhood she lives in. She's jumpy when she thinks she's being followed. She's angry at Moses and his gang when they mug her. The first thing she wants to do, to do better so that she can move away. It's, that's her first thought always. It's something the gang doesn't quite understand why she'd want to do that. They're very territorial. And they also didn't realize that she lived there. She didn't realize she was one of them. And Moses even says that they wouldn't have mugged her if they knew that she lived there. Which, of course, she retorts with, so it's okay to mug somebody if they didn't live here? That sort of thing, But they don't understand that she would like to not be part of this place anymore. But, the second thing is an event in her life that she carries with her as a close-minded reaction for half the movie is this whole thing that goes on here. Even when the gang saves her life, she still is holding on to this thing that's going on. So it does say something about lower end neighborhoods and how they work. How some people are left with little choice but to fall into gangs, and how some, particularly professional white folks, might view an inner city neighborhood and the people within it. And it's typically brought with it, that's where the crime is. Crime happens everywhere. So, but there is this idea that, if you're white and suburban, you don't live downtown because that's where the crime is. That sort of thinking. Yes, Moses and his gang are up to no good, but that's not all they are. Yes, they want Samantha's money, but they don't want her to be killed by these creatures. I mean, their situation is bad, but it's kind of been handed to them based on other situations and scenarios that they didn't have as much or any control over. The same can be said about Samantha. Her situation is not ideal, but she had little control over it based on her lower pay, something the gang knows about her, when they find out that she's a nurse, which leads to her living in a place she doesn't feel comfortable, which leads to other things reinforcing her opinion about her neighbors, which reinforces her desire to get out of the tower block. But she may not ever have control over any of that. So there are definitely interesting dynamics going on here with the characters that start these characters off as kind of unlikable for various reasons, only for you to really appreciate them and like how they work through those initial first impressions and how they begin to really kind of form a true neighborly, this kind of true neighborly sense about who these people are around each other. And it's really well done here. Thirdly, I really like the idea of these creatures being these kind of mammalian things but completely and totally alien, with their glowing teeth, mouth, and phosphorescent saliva, as well as being, kind of incomprehensible in a physical sense because their fur is so dark that it's like you're looking at a void in the shape of a fuzzy animal. When they realize how black the creature's fur is, one of the gang members touches the creature's fur, and it's shot very well because nothing is reflecting off of the blackness of the fur. There's not even any shine or sheen to the fibers of the fur. It's a void. And when the kid's hand, basically touches the fur and some of it gets covered by it, what gets covered seemingly is completely swallowed by the blackness. It's an awesome concept for a very cool design. Aliens are typically seen as these hairless, spindly things that almost look clammy than anything else. So I like that these are more like dogs or wolves. They're quadrupedal and ferocious as opposed to being something that looks like a typical logically thinking creature. It also makes it possible for them to hide in the shadows and jump out for some extra scares. It's really great stuff. Now that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. You can catch new episodes of Monster Mondays each Monday at filmseizure.com, but don't forget to follow Film Seizure at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Film Seizure to get both the Film Seizure podcast and Monster Mondays at your favorite podcast providers as well as YouTube. And you can also check out my website, bmovieanima.com, to read new reviews every Friday morning. Next week, we track down the famous author of a series of children's horror books to put his creations back into the books he wrote in 2015's Goosebumps. And until next week, stay spooky.